Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the second day of the YORStory Festival. It's been a great festival. I have really enjoyed it. I have even enjoyed a talk about football, so I'm ready for anything today. And today we are with Sondy, who is a very good friend of mine and who is also the head of religious studies at UCC Cork, and regularly does the Thought for the Day God slot on BBC Radio Scotland. Hello, Aman, how are you?
Very well. How are you, Rachel?
I'm a wee bit tired, but I'm still ready to go for today. Now, how long have you been doing this, what we call in the radio the God slot? First of all, can you explain quickly for anybody who's not in the UK what the God slot is?
So the God slot is basically a 2-minute slot on BBC Radio Scotland where a guest will pick up a current affair, something that's happening in the news or happened in the news, and you would add a personal reflection on that with your own religious understanding or meaning to it. I think that kind of sums it up. The BBC Radio 4 one is slightly longer than 2 minutes, but it's a similar kind of aim and objective of that God slot. And there's been a lot of kind of discussion about whether the God slot's a good thing or whether it's a bad thing. So there's lots of debate around its relevance.
Now, you do it because you obviously think it's a good thing or you wouldn't be doing it. So what is it that you think that it offers?
Well, I got involved in it by actually, I was going to say by chance, but maybe it wasn't by chance. I was doing my PhD at the University of Glasgow, and I was working on a major project and also doing my PhD at the same time. And Mona Siddiqui was there at Glasgow at that time, and as you know, Mona has been doing Thought for the Day for years. She does not just BBC Radio Scotland, but BBC Radio 4. And I got involved, I think, through that network. And I initially got invited by one of the producers to write a couple of drafts, and eventually became a regular on the show.
Now,
this was back, but I didn't actually tell you when it was, Rachel. It was about, I think it was around about 2005, 2006. It could be 2004. But when I first started, it was quite daunting, to be honest with you. I think I messed up a few of the initial drafts. I didn't quite know. Well, I did know because, I had been, listening into Mona. And, another huge inspiration to me in Thought for the Day is the late Reverend Lionel Blue, who many of you will know, had a very particular way of presenting it. And, he was both funny yet serious. So I had all these great role models, but I just didn't actually know, the kind of the mechanics of it, which took quite a wee while. It took a wee while. So that was basically where it started.
So you're saying it took a wee while, but can you explain to me what the mechanics of it are? Because a lot of the time I Thought for the Day, a lot of people will kind of hark back to kind of really old sort of 1980s Scottish comedy where people are, they're sitting up big chairs and it's late call. They used to have on the television, and then we have Billy Connolly saying life is like an ashtray full of little doubts. So it can be slightly, its reputation can be that it's a bit cliched, but listening to you're never cliched. So that is the mechanics of it. How do you avoid life is like an ashtray full of little doubts? Or that brings me to thinking about God and those cliched lines.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, at the beginning, I kind of was thinking that, every thought of mine has to have a Quranic verse in it. I am Muslim, if you haven't already figured that one out. So I think I am part of the team because I speak from a Muslim faith perspective. But I quickly kind of learned that, a lot of the issues, a lot of the contemporary conundrums that we face, we all face them, whether we have faith or not. So, some of the big questions that we have, we all are trying to muddle through and think about them from kind of ethical perspectives. And that, it took me a long time to kind of figure that out, that, gosh, there are people out there who are not, Muslim, but they can identify with the message that I'm putting together in 2 minutes. What I have done, Rachel, is I've actually selected 3 thought for the days since I started right up until last summer, just to give your audience a kind of snapshot into my own kind of journey in this. Because when I started in 2004, 2005, I can't remember the year, I was doing my PhD, and I was doing a lot of things at that time. So I actually, look back at some of this writing and think that my own, not that my ideas have changed dramatically, but it kind of gives you an idea that writing and kind of, I see thought for the day as a 2-minute kind of story that you have to tell with a spin on it at the end. So if you want, I could read you one of my
please do read one of the early ones, and then almost like give us the critique of it, how you would critique it now, and what the mechanics are of it, because I think that's really the essence of it, of getting something across that's quite profound in such a short space of time.
Okay, so this one I think was one of the earliest, and like I said, if somebody is out there who knows when what I'm talking, it'll make more sense when this documentary came out. They'll figure out what year it was, but I'll just read it the way it was. And the title of it is, well, there's no title. So when you go on to present, you always start with good morning. Mind your language. When was the last time you heard that one? This is probably the most repeated mantra of every parent and teacher in the country. Channel 4 have chosen to look at the foul language of young people in a documentary tonight, aptly named Mind Your Effing Language. The thing about swearing is that there's more to it than that often used rebuke allows for. Being multilingual, I know that swears in Arabic, Urdu, and Punjabi can mean different things to different people in different settings. My experience of English growing up in Glasgow, I found swearing was usually added to conversations, not in an offensive way, but to add emphasis on a point or to make it more humorous. Swearing in this context was a colourful form of self-expression. I'm not condoning it, and of course I accept that foul language can be hurtful and upsetting. As a part-time religious education teacher in an inner city school in Glasgow, I'm used to hearing young people swearing casually in conversation. My immediate response is, mind your language, but sometimes I just let it wash over me. The most productive conversation I've ever had with a pupil was littered with F words. The pupil explained he'd been grounded by his parents for a month for being drunk. I allowed him the space to tell me how he felt, and it was clear he wouldn't have been able to do this without using the F word in abundance. We then had quite detailed discussion about the attitude to alcohol and tobacco across different religions, where the teenager revealed quite an extensive vocabulary and understanding despite his swearing. I explained why many religions raise concerns about the harmful effects of alcohol and tobacco, and to my surprise, he agreed with me. I realized that beneath all that foul language and bravado, there was a thoughtful and reflective kid. Granted, swearing is not an endearing quality in the youth of today, but maybe if we listened a little harder, we might hear more than just bad language.
So that was so. Can you explain to us the mechanics of that? And because I mean, so you can hear it. I mean, you can hear it. It's got a very, very specific cadence. I mean, it sounds like a thought for the day. There's a specific tone and almost way that you speak it, a way of going up and down that's very, very much the thought for the day cadence.
Yeah. I mean, you're really, the day before you present, the producer will call and will basically ask you, is there anything that you've seen on the news that you want to comment on? And that kind of had just caught my eye. So you kind of try to weave in how you understand it, and that's basically, you just have, these back and forth with the producer on the idea, what's the core issue that you're trying to get across, and it's a 2-minute thought, so you should have one clear kind of thought going through it. Now, I think that, my earlier thoughts were not as crisp as I'd like them to be. The next one that I've actually picked for you, Rachel, is one of my favorites, actually. I think I've told you this before, that I was an umpire for 2 years at Wimbledon, and in the summer of 2009 I was an umpire at Wimbledon, and it was a very busy summer for me because I was just getting my PhD, and in 2009 I actually moved to the States as well. So I was in the States for 6 years, and initially I thought that maybe I wouldn't be doing Thought for the Day, but they kept me on, and every time I'd return back to Glasgow during summer and Christmas holidays, I would be slotted in. So Monday the 29th of June, and this took a lot because it was quite complicated getting the producers to agree that I would be sitting on the little hut which kind of overlooked the tennis courts at the All England Club, and it was quite complicated. And to get actually, because I was an umpire, to get the umpire squad, or the people who were in charge, to get to go up to them and say, I do Thought for the Day, and they were just like, what is going on? So it was actually wearing all these different hats. But this was my Thought for the Day from Monday the 29th of June 2009. Returning back to officiate as a line umpire here at the All England Club in Wimbledon was not like the first time, as things never are. I've always resisted my trips to London because I've always felt it was a city too big for my liking. But this time I felt more relaxed, travelling around on the tube without a map and walking the streets like a Londoner. Such a feeling has made me think about nationalism in the last few days. Tennis players from countries across the globe strive to play on and succeed on what is for them the holy green grass. Supporters bring flags of countries and shout encouragement in a variety of different languages. And there are always great geographical conflicts being resolved on court, such as this year's men's double pairing. Esam ul Haq Qureshi from Pakistan and his Indian partner, Prakash Amritraj. As I watched on the sidelines of one of their matches, I saw a Sikh man wearing turbans cheering them on, and fully veiled Muslim Pakistani women cheering them on too. Interesting, with pretty similar words. In this way, my emotions are stirred when I watch Andy Murray as a Scotsman, rousing the fans who make the mighty trek from our beloved Scotland to SW19 in their tam o' shanters with bustling red hair for fun, but also when I see players from the Indian subcontinent who pull the strings of my ancestral heritage. It reminds me of the Quranic verse, which states that God's earth is vast. Maybe God is telling us not to shrink the vastness through our small minds. Nationalism has a fine way of placing us all into neat boxes, just as religion does. Yet the beauty is in exploring each other's worlds in order to strengthen our own and see the remarkable similarities. For after all, what brings all these tennis players together is their love of tennis, regardless of what country they developed and refined their skills. And well, it must be said to end that there is no better way to experience this international display of greatness without strawberries and cream.
So what you're doing there is you're really, from those two, you're kind of taking a normal event and asking people to kind of think deeper and have more compassion, rather than, and I could see you put a Quranic verse in there, but a lot of it is about actually bringing the big religious questions, rather than the kind of theological questions, but bringing in the big religious behavior questions into everyday, like how to be compassionate, how to be caring, how to see past a kid swearing, how to see past, how to enjoy your kind of nationalism without making it exclusive, that kind of thing.
Yes, but I also think, now as the head of a study of religions department, I think that we have a lot of misconceptions of what religion is. Mm-hmm. We're so used to seeing religion in a way that's theological, and God said this and this is the Bible, but the nuance, the ideas that kind of make you think are really essential. And I think that all religions at some level are pushing individuals to think about the three great questions: where did I come from, what am I doing here, and where am I going to end up? So that for me is religion. And often we box religion in ways to say, right, that's Judaism, that's Christianity and Islam. But religion, in a sense, and this is why, I'm probably involved in the God slot, is religion is a lot more than that. Religion is about bringing people together. It's about, checking in with your neighbor who may be radically different from you. And I think that is why I continue to have so much faith in this God slot. Because, there's been times where I've spoken to some of my fellow Thought for the Dayers, and we often sit and we say, gosh, are we just saying the same stuff over and over again? Right, this is the news piece. This is how I see it. We should all come together. We should all love each other. But that message cannot be understated. It needs to be said over and over again, because I think the world that we live in is so fractured in a sense that we need to hear it. So yes, there are people who sit in and listen to the God slot and say, oh gosh, here, they, whoever they are, off they go again on their little religious rant. But when you look at what's happening in the street, it's, we need it. We need peace. And, and it's so important to kind of keep saying that message. This is why I continue to do this. And every time, yeah.
So it is like the message of giving, of trying to get people to have some compassion and
to make them think as well, Rachel. I think at some level, I'm a teacher at heart. I believe all my training to an extent was to get people to think and to think critically. And so for me, it's about challenging the way we understand not just ourselves, but our fellow human being, because there's still so much that we kind of misunderstand about each other.
And how do you feel? I mean, for example, with you doing Thought for the Day, you're sort of used to speaking to an audience that isn't necessarily religious. How do you feel that social media has kind of extended that for you, and that you have a specific role in social media that's different from my role in social media, where I can just talk any crap I want? But do you feel that you've got a specific role to play in social media as kind of part, almost like an extension of Thought for the Day role?
I think, I'm more involved in kind of, more social issues, just by being who I am. I don't have the privilege of kind of just walking away at times, because I function and I thrive, adding a positive note in a very white Ireland. And I'm not saying that to say, oh, look, it's white in a way that's negative, but I'm saying that with that comes a lot of comes a certain type of burden. So there's a lot of people kind of looking in, and I get emails from, younger folk, if I could call them that, who kind of say, oh, I heard you just saying that, I've read your this, and you're a great inspiration to me. And that gives me a sense of, I have to think carefully about what I say, because there are people listening in, and there are people who are hurt, and people who are traumatized by religion, and what can we do to build that bridge? And there's a lot of people who and breaking bridges or burning bridges, a lot of people kind of, dare I say it, capitalize on that as well.
So you've got this very difficult role, but you've got to practice good religion against the people that practice bad religion. You've got to convince people that don't like religion that religion isn't bad. And then kind of the social media tendency, like I have quite a lot personally, burning every single bridge you can see. Your job is to rebuild them. And that's a very difficult sort of role. I mean, you can see that sort of role with things like Thought for the Day, trying to make you think slightly differently. Now, we have a couple of questions. One of the questions is, when you're doing Thought for the Day, do you assume no knowledge of religion in your listeners?
I think everybody has some sort of knowledge about religion, because like I said, I think one of the biggest issues that I think about every day in a religions department is that when somebody says religion, we immediately think of something. What is it that you think about? And is it possible to challenge yourself to think about religion, not just as a word, but as a concept, as a lived reality in a different way? Do we think, I often say to my students, when I say to you religion, what do you think of? And they're often talking, because they're from around Cork, they will talk about, the Catholic Church, the Bible. And I'm like, what about religions that don't have a text? What about religions that don't understand a building in the way that we understand a church. How do we understand the term of religion then? And that for me then always goes back to those three ultimate questions that every human being at some level, whatever way, within their culture, within their language, whatever it is, through art, through whatever it is, are trying to figure out, where did I come from? What am I doing here? And where am I going to end up? And these are all just various and varied expressions of trying to find answers to that. So at some level, when I'm doing my thought for the day, I try to connect with that.
Mm-hmm. And there's another question of, do you get any feedback from your audience? And what is the best response you have received knowing that your message got through?
It varies. Sometimes, I now post the script onto my Twitter, and so sometimes I will get comments saying that was really good. I often try to avoid very controversial topics, but sometimes I feel that it's important to. I think one of my thought for the days that got retweeted and read most was the one I wrote about the protests that were happening outside a school in England about the teaching of sexuality and family as a in a wider context. And I kind of talked about why Muslims were protesting against this and how we have to think carefully about this for the future. So I was kind of opening out the discussion, whereas a lot of people were trying to close it down. And I think so for me, doing that in 2 minutes is really quite rewarding. The most difficult one that I've done though was actually last summer. Sorry, Rachel, were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to ask you as well. That middleweight is not very popular right now. I'm thinking of the kind of people that want to do that. I'm just, obviously like everybody else, I live far too much I live my whole life online and have done for the past year. But I do spend, like everybody else who's got a Twitter account, far too much time on Twitter. And it's very rare, to be honest, the only two people that I can see who try and take that middle way a lot are you and Richard Coles. And so I don't think it's any coincidence that the two of you are very much involved in religion, because it's like you're trying to hold quite disparate things together and say there needs to be a compromise here. Mm-hmm. Because, when you hear everybody else, there does seem, and no matter what the fight's about, doesn't matter what it's about, it could be about coffee and tea, there does seem to be a very much somebody who likes coffee starts to shout, well, there needs to be a compromise here, which basically means people need to stop drinking tea and drink coffee. That's the compromise. Yeah. Whereas I can see you're very much we need to have a discussion and we need to work out how we meet people. And that's not a popular stance to take.
No, it's not. But again, that I think for me is how I want to do my public scholarship, right? My home is in the academic world, where I know I work with a lot of academics who have great ideas. They just can't translate them, into the public square. But translating stuff into the public square requires measure. Like I said, for me, it's about I've never off my teaching mode. So I'm always trying to get people to think and to arrive at their own conclusions. Now, of course, behind closed doors, I can tell you what my views are in particular. Not that I kind of hide them in any way, but I just think that to get the widest possible reach is to really get people who you totally disagree with, get them to think and get them to bring them into the conversation and have a measured conversation. I think that's really, really important to do that. And I like I said, my real inspiration is folk like Reverend Lionel Blue, but also Mona Siddiqui and the kind of work that she's done in Scotland. And to get people to think and understand. I mean, even at the bare minimal level, if you can get somebody to not stop making individuals, communities, or a country or a nation or whatever into a monster and just say that's a monster there, that for me is that's a breakthrough. Mm-hmm. Because there are, like the way that, I often think about who are the big bad monsters? Is it Muslims? Is it Iran? I don't know. I mean, is it? I don't know. I'm just kind of saying stuff off the top of my head. Is it Northern Ireland I don't know. I'm just trying to think. And so breaking that down at some level is really, really important.
I mean, it just does seem that middle way, that it's not even necessarily that middle way of compromise, but that middle way of trying to approach people and say, us, you know, at some point we have to work out how to live together and how are we going to do this. Doesn't, you know, it's just really interesting that right now it doesn't seem like a popular time for that kind of discussion. So there's another question of someone was saying, someone has asked, what's the most difficult thought for the day that you did?
This might be a good one to end on. The most difficult one was actually last summer. Now, we're always told when we finish the script, you know, the day before, that something could happen, anything could happen, and if it's a major news, then, you know, be on standby to change it. I've never had a change like this, but it did happen last summer on Tuesday, the 4th of August, when you know, I had written a thought for the day, but some major news happened, and I was up till, I think we finalized the script just before midnight. And I actually have the script here, so you want me to read that, because I know we're running out of time, and this will give you an idea. And
this will be, so this is how we're going to end it. We're going to end it with the most difficult thought for the day that you've done.
For me, I mean, there could be other thought for the day, people listening and going, oh, I would have been able to do that. But for me, it was very difficult, because it was trying to balance what I'd already written during the day and to weave it into what had happened. And it was major, and you'll get a sense of that from when I read this. Sorry, I'm just so used to saying good morning. Good morning. We've woken to the news of the shocking numbers of casualties in the Beirut blasts yesterday. It's devastating for a country whose people were already struggling with economic instability, as well as the pandemic. How does any country so vulnerable even begin to recover? The slow, painful recovery will lie in good leadership, strong communities, and not just in Lebanon, but in many parts of the world in the coming years. A few days ago, John Hume, the Irish political leader and Nobel Peace Prize winner, died at the age of 83 in Derry. He was a household name and an example of someone who acted as a focal point of leadership and through incredibly difficult times contributed in bringing together divided communities. It's interesting that he began his journey in theology. It's said that he studied for the priesthood, but decided to take another path. This early path in religion must have been essential for him to understand the religious divides in Ireland. Hume made many an impassioned speech on the mechanics of peace and what divides us. In one of his speeches, he argued that all conflict was about one thing: difference, whether it be religion, race, or your nationality. Hume argued difference is a part of humanity and that respect for difference should be normal and very common. Such a beautiful sentiment, but we know that acceptance of differences in all our paths are not that easy, and that peace often stands on a thin foundation. Do all paths lead to peace? So many people have praised Hume, from political opponents to religious figures. The same people who would conflict on ideas and may never be on the same page. Peace is an idea, an act forward to aspire to, as we recognize that the path to peace, or at least grappling with it, is vital in any society. We can connect places like Ireland and Lebanon through the varied issues that bring troubles, anxiety, and sorrow to its people, in hope that our shared humanity and leadership allows us all to live peacefully, equally, and differently.
That was great. Well, thank you very much, Aman. I think you've given people a lot to think about, and a lot to think about how you can write, how you need to kind of write such profound thoughts so quickly and make them and bring them into people's real lives. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. And all the best with the festival. I think it's going absolutely great. I was in a couple of the sessions yesterday. So all the best to you and to Your Stories as well. Thanks again, Rachel, for the invitation.